Welcome back to another mind-bending Game of Thrones what-if scenario. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating alternate timelines in Westeros history. What if the Honorable Ned Stark had found baby Daenerys instead of her surviving, with Viserys? How would this single change reshape the entire Song of Ice and Fire? Let's set the scene. It's the aftermath of Robert's Rebellion. King's Landing has fallen, the Mad King is dead, and the Targaryen dynasty lies in ruins. In our original timeline, Viserys and baby Daenerys escaped to Pentos, beginning their long exile. But what if fate had different plans? Picture this alternate moment. As Ned Stark searches the Red Keep after the sack of King's Landing, he discovers something that stops him cold. Hidden in the royal nursery, beneath fallen stones and debris, he hears the faint cry of an infant. Following the sound, he finds a silver-haired baby girl, Daenerys Targaryen, abandoned and alone. Now, we know Ned Stark's character. This is the man who raised Jon Snow as his own bastard to protect him from Robert's wrath. This is the man whose honor often conflicted with political necessity. Standing there, holding this Targaryen child, Ned faces an impossible choice. Robert wants all Targaryens dead, the realm demands it. But Ned sees only an innocent baby who had no part in her father's madness. In this timeline, Ned makes a decision that echoes his choice with Jon Snow. He cannot bring himself to harm an innocent child. But unlike Jon, Daenerys cannot be hidden. In plain sight, her distinctive Valyrian features would give her away immediately. So Ned does something unprecedented. He secretly arranges for her safe passage to Essos, but not with Viserys. Instead, he contacts his old friend from the Eyrie, someone he trusts implicitly, perhaps a loyal knight or a maester sworn to secrecy. Daenerys is spirited away to Braavos, not Pentos, and placed with a family that owes their lives to Stark loyalty, a family that would raise her not as a dispossessed princess plotting her return, but as their own daughter. This single act of mercy creates ripple effects that will transform everything we know about the Game of Thrones. Daenerys grows up not knowing her true identity, raised with northern values of honor, duty, and justice. She learns the common tongue as her first language, not High Valyrian. She's taught that power comes with responsibility, not divine right. Meanwhile, Viserys remains alone in Pentos, growing increasingly bitter and mad without his sister to sell or use as a political tool. His isolation drives him deeper into delusion. Without Daenerys, he cannot arrange the marriage to Khal Drogo. The Dothraki alliance never forms. Viserys becomes nothing more than a mad exile, eventually dying forgotten in some Essosi gutter. But what about our hidden princess? Let's call her by the name her adoptive family gives her, perhaps Lyanna in honor of Ned's sister. She grows up strong and capable, learning swordplay from her adoptive brothers, studying history and languages from tutors her benefactors provide. She shows natural leadership abilities but channels them toward protecting others, not conquering them. The family that raises her knows her true identity. They must to properly protect her. But they teach her that nobility comes from actions, not blood. They tell her stories of the Mad King's atrocities, ensuring she understands why the Targaryens fell. Most importantly, they share stories of Ned Stark's honor, the man who saved her life when he could have simply looked away, as Daenerys, or Lyanna as she's known, grows into a young woman. She begins experiencing strange dreams. Dragons call to her in her sleep. Fire doesn't burn her skin. She finds she has an intuitive understanding of ancient languages she's never studied. Her adoptive family realizes they cannot hide her nature forever. On her 16th name day, they reveal the truth. She is Daenerys Targaryen, last of her line, saved by the honor of Ned Stark. But instead of feeling entitled to a throne, She feels the weight of responsibility. She understands that power corrupts, that her family's legacy is one of madness and destruction. Yet she also feels the pull of her dragon blood, the call to something greater. This revelation creates our first major divergence point. Unlike the original Daenerys who embraced her destiny as the rightful queen, this version questions whether the world needs another Targaryen ruler. She's been raised with northern sensibilities. She values justice over birthright, protection over conquest. But events in Westeros are already moving. Robert still sits the Iron Throne, growing fat and unhappy. The Lannisters still scheme. Winter is still coming, and beyond the Wall, the White Walkers still stir. The realm needs heroes, whether they want to be or not. Our alternate Daenerys faces a choice that will define not just her story, but the fate of 2 continents. Will she embrace her dragon heritage to fight the coming darkness? Will she seek out the man who saved her, Ned Stark, and offer her aid to the realm that cast her family out? Or will she try to forge a completely different path, one that honors both her Targaryen blood and her northern upbringing? Let's dive deeper into this transformed Daenerys. Unlike her original counterpart who grew up bitter and desperate for power, this version has been shaped by entirely different values. She's learned that true strength comes from protecting the weak, not ruling them. She's studied the histories, not as a dispossessed queen plotting her return, but as a scholar understanding the mistakes of the past. When her adoptive family reveals her true identity, Daenerys doesn't immediately embrace her Targaryen heritage. Instead, she's horrified. She's grown up hearing stories of the Mad King's cruelties, of how the realm celebrated when Robert's rebellion ended Targaryen rule. The weight of her family's sins presses down on her like a mountain. But there's something else stirring within her, something she cannot ignore. The dragon dreams grow stronger. She finds herself drawn to the ancient Valyrian texts in Braavos's libraries. Most tellingly, she begins hearing whispers of a darkness gathering in the far north. Her dragon blood, it seems, is awakening to sense the true threat facing the world. Meanwhile, in Westeros, events unfold differently without the looming threat of a Targaryen restoration. Robert's reign continues unchallenged by external threats, but internal corruption still festers. The Lannisters still scheme. The Starks still honor their duties, and Littlefinger still plays his games. However, without the fear of dragons returning, certain political calculations change dramatically. The turning point comes when Daenerys accidentally reveals her fire immunity during a house fire in Braavos. While saving trapped children, she walks through flames that should have killed her instantly. Word of this miracle spreads like wildfire through the free cities. The whispers begin. A dragon lives. Realizing they can no longer hide her, Daenerys's adoptive family makes a crucial decision. They arrange a secret meeting with someone who knew her true heritage all along, the man who saved her life 16 years ago. They send word to Winterfell. The debt of honor is ready to be repaid. Ned Stark, now older and wearier from years of ruling the North, receives this cryptic message with a mixture of dread and anticipation. He always knew this day might come. The child he saved would eventually discover her true nature. But he never expected her to reach out to him. In this timeline, Ned makes a decision that changes everything. Instead of ignoring the message or treating it as a threat, he recognizes an opportunity. The realm faces growing problems. Rumors of wildling armies, whispers of strange creatures beyond the wall, and the ever-present threat of political instability. Perhaps a Targaryen raised with northern values could be an ally rather than an enemy. Ned secretly travels to White Harbor, where he meets Daenerys for the first time since she was an infant. The meeting is awkward, tense, and transformative for both of them. Daenerys sees the man who saved her life. Older, grayer, but still radiating the honor that defined his choice so many years ago. Ned sees not the Mad King's daughter, but a young woman struggling with responsibility she never asked for. Their conversation lasts through the night. Daenerys asks why he saved her. Ned explains that he could not punish a child for her father's crimes. She asks what he expects of her now. He tells her the truth. The realm faces darkness, and perhaps the dragons were meant to return for a reason. This meeting establishes a secret alliance that will reshape Westeros. Daenerys agrees to remain hidden for now, but she also agrees to prepare herself for what may come. Ned provides her with resources: gold, information, and, most importantly, guidance from maesters who can help her understand her abilities. But their alliance doesn't go unnoticed. Spies in White Harbor report strange meetings to their masters. In King's Landing, Littlefinger, ever opportunistic, begins investigating rumors of Stark connections to exiled Targaryens. Varys, the spider, spins new webs as he senses the political landscape shifting. Meanwhile, Daenerys returns to Braavos, transformed. She's no longer just a girl hiding from her destiny. She's a dragon, learning to control its fire. She begins training in earnest, studying not just combat and leadership, but the ancient arts of her people. She seeks out the few remaining dragon lore, texts, learning about the bond between dragons and their riders. Most importantly, she begins planning. If she truly is meant to face some great darkness, she'll need more than just her birthright. She'll need allies, resources, and perhaps most. Crucially, she'll need dragons. The question becomes, how does one obtain dragons when they've been extinct for over a century? 6 months have passed since that fateful meeting in White Harbor. Daenerys has returned to Braavos, but she's no longer the confused girl struggling with her identity. Under Ned's guidance and with resources he's secretly provided, she's begun transforming into something the world hasn't seen in generations. A Targaryen who understands both power and responsibility. Her first challenge: obtaining dragons. In the original timeline, Daenerys received dragon eggs as wedding gifts and hatched them through blood magic and fire. But our alternate Daenerys has no Dothraki husband, no convenient funeral pyre, and no desperate circumstances driving her to attempt the impossible. Instead, she must be smarter, more calculated. Using Ned's gold and her adoptive family's connections in Braavos, Daenerys begins purchasing every piece of dragon lore, every ancient text, every whispered legend she can find. The Iron Bank, always. Interested in profitable investments, quietly funds her research when she demonstrates her fire immunity to their representatives. They see potential in a Targaryen who approaches power through knowledge rather than conquest. Through her studies, Daenerys discovers something crucial that her original counterpart never learned. Dragon eggs don't just hatch through fire and blood. They respond to specific conditions. A combination of magical resonance, emotional intensity, and, most importantly, the presence of true Targaryen blood awakening to its purpose. The key isn't desperation, it's acceptance of one's destiny. The dragon eggs she eventually acquires come from an unexpected source. In this timeline, without Viserys' desperate schemes, Illyrio Mopatis's collection remains intact. When rumors reach him of a true Targaryen manifesting dragon traits, he sees an opportunity for a different kind of investment. Rather than backing the mad Viserys, he approaches Daenerys through intermediaries. The negotiation is unlike anything from the original timeline. Instead of marriage alliances and invasion plans, Daenerys offers Illyrio something far more valuable: partnership in preparing for the long night. She shares her research, her theories about the returning darkness, and most compellingly, her vision of using dragons not to conquer cities, but to protect the realm from what lies beyond the wall. Illyrio, ever the pragmatist, recognizes the truth in her words. He's lived long enough to remember the old stories, and his own sources confirm strange happenings in the far north. He provides the dragon eggs not as payment for future conquest, but as investment in the world's survival. The hatching itself occurs under vastly different circumstances. Instead of a funeral pyre driven by grief and desperation, Daenerys creates a ritual of purpose and protection. In a hidden chamber beneath Braavos, surrounded by her adoptive family and witnessed by representatives of both Ned Stark and the Iron Bank, she enters the flames not to die and be reborn, but to awaken the guardians the world needs. 3 dragons emerge. Balerion, named for the Black Dread, but representing protection rather than conquest. Visenya, honoring the warrior. Queen, but dedicated to defending the innocent. And Rhaenys, for the gentle queen, symbolizing mercy and wisdom. Unlike the original Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, these dragons are born not from vengeance and loss, but from purpose and hope. The world's reaction to dragons returning is immediate and dramatic. In King's Landing, Robert Baratheon receives the news with a mixture of rage and terror. His greatest fear, Targaryen restoration, seems to be manifesting. But this time, the reports are confusing. The dragons aren't being used to burn cities or gather armies. Instead, they're seen flying reconnaissance missions over the narrow sea, as if searching for something. Daenerys' dragons have been conducting reconnaissance flights over the northern reaches of Essos for 3 months now. What they've discovered sends chills through everyone who hears their reports. Entire villages beyond the Shivering Sea have gone silent. Ships that venture too far north never return. Most disturbing of all, the dragons themselves refuse to fly beyond certain latitudes, their ancestral memories warning them of ancient enemies. Through her network of informants and her growing alliance with the Iron Bank, Daenerys begins piecing together a terrifying picture. The reports aren't isolated to Essos. Similar disappearances are occurring north of the Wall in Westeros. The pattern suggests something is awakening across the entire northern edge of the known world. Meanwhile, Ned Stark faces his own crisis of loyalty. King Robert has summoned him to King's Landing, demanding answers about rumors connecting him to Targaryen sympathizers. The situation becomes more complex when Maester Luwin receives disturbing reports from Castle Black. The Night's Watch speaks of strange lights beyond the wall, of rangers disappearing, of something stirring in the land of always winter. Ned realizes he can no longer maintain his secret alliance with Daenerys while serving Robert faithfully. The time has come for truth, regardless of the consequences. In a move that mirrors his original timeline's fateful honesty, Ned makes a choice that will define this alternate history. He tells Robert everything. The revelation scene in the Red Keep becomes one of the most pivotal moments in this timeline. Ned, standing before the Iron Throne with Robert, Cersei, Jaime, and the small council present, reveals not just Daenerys' survival, but the reason for his protection of her. He speaks of growing darkness in the north, of dragons returning not for conquest but for defense, and of an ancient duty that transcends political grudges. Robert's reaction is volcanic. The man who built his crown on Targaryen destruction cannot comprehend why his best friend would protect the enemy's last heir. But Ned's honesty, combined with Maester Pycelle's reluctant confirmation of disturbing reports from the Citadel, creates doubt where certainty once existed. The political earthquake that follows reshapes the Seven Kingdoms. Some lords call for Ned's arrest as a traitor. Others, particularly those from the north and the Riverlands, remember that Stark honor has never led them astray. The realm splits not into traditional factions, but into those who believe in the supernatural threat and those who dismiss it as northern superstition. In Essos, Daenerys receives word of Ned's revelation through her network. She realizes that her protector has sacrificed his position, possibly his life, to bring the truth to light. This act of honor, so characteristic of the man who saved her, crystallizes her resolve. If Ned Stark can risk everything for truth, she can do no less. Daenerys makes a decision that would have been impossible for her original counterpart. She prepares to come to Westeros not as a conqueror, but as a supplicant. She will offer her dragon's service to whoever will listen, king or rebel, Stark or Baratheon, if they'll unite against the true threat. The Great Hall of Winterfell has never hosted a gathering quite like this. Lords from across the north have assembled at Ned Stark's call, their banners representing centuries of honor and tradition. But outside the castle walls, something unprecedented guards the ancient seat of the Starks. 3 dragons, their massive forms creating shadows that dance across the courtyard stones. Daenerys. Targaryen enters Winterfell not in conquest, but in supplication. Dressed in simple traveling clothes rather than royal regalia, she walks beside Ned Stark as his invited guest, not his captive. The transformation from the original timeline is startling. Here stands a Targaryen who understands that respect must be earned, not demanded by birthright. The introductions are tense but respectful. Catelyn Stark, initially horrified by her husband's protection of a Targaryen, finds her anger softening when she meets the young woman who carries herself with northern sensibility despite her dragon blood. Robb, now a young man shaped by his father's honor, sees not an enemy princess but a potential ally against an unthinkable threat. But it's the meeting with Jon Snow that creates the most profound moment of this alternate timeline. When Daenerys looks upon Ned's bastard son, something stirs within her dragon blood, a recognition she cannot explain. Jon, for his part, feels an inexplicable connection to this silver-haired stranger. Neither knows the truth of Jon's parentage, but their Targaryen blood calls to each other across the centuries. The war council that follows transforms the political landscape of Westeros forever. Daenerys presents her evidence. Artifacts from beyond the Bone Mountains, testimony from survivors, reconnaissance reports from her dragons. The lords of the north, already inclined to trust Stark judgment, find themselves confronted with proof of threats their grandfathers only whispered about in tales. The alliance that forms in Winterfell's Great Hall represents everything the original Game of Thrones could have become if honor had triumphed over ambition. The northern lords pledge their swords not to Daenerys as queen, but to the realm as protector. In return, she offers her dragon's fire, her wealth from Essos allies, and most importantly, her knowledge of ancient warfare gleaned from Valyrian texts. But the challenges extend far beyond the north. King Robert, upon learning of Ned's treasonous alliance, declares both the Warden of the North and the last Targaryen to be enemies of the realm. The southern lords find themselves forced to choose between loyalty to the crown and belief in supernatural threats they've never seen. 6 months have passed since the alliance formed at Winterfell, and the realm has transformed beyond recognition. The Wall, once a forgotten border manned by criminals and outcasts, has become the most fortified position in the known world. Dragons patrol its length daily, their flames melting ice formations that appear overnight, and their keen eyes spotting threats that human guards would miss. Daenerys has established herself not as a queen in exile, but as the realm's protector. Her dragons, Balerion, Visenya, and Rhaenys, have grown into magnificent beasts, but unlike their original timeline counterparts, they serve strategy over rage. Each dragon has specialized roles. Balerion focuses on heavy assault, Visenya excels at precision strikes, and Rhaenys serves as the primary reconnaissance platform. The defensive preparations showcase the best of both northern pragmatism and Targaryen innovation, ancient dragonglass weapons forged using techniques recovered from Valyrian texts, arm every soldier. Wildfire, produced in unprecedented quantities with Daenerys' knowledge of alchemical processes, waits in strategic positions along the wall. Most importantly, coordination between dragonfire and ground forces has been practiced until it becomes second nature. But the realm remains divided. King Robert, driven by his hatred of Targaryens and his inability to comprehend supernatural threats, has declared Ned Stark a traitor and marched north with a royal army. The kingdom teeters on the edge of civil war even as the dead march south. The crisis reaches its breaking point when Robert's forces arrive at the Neck, demanding passage north to end the Targaryen threat once and for all. Ned, caught between his oath to his king and his duty to the realm, makes the most difficult decision of his life. He refuses passage, effectively declaring rebellion against the Iron Throne. The confrontation that follows will define both timelines. Robert, to face with his oldest friend, cannot understand how honor could lead to what he sees as ultimate betrayal. Ned, weathered by months of impossible choices, finally speaks the truth that should have been told years ago. Some things matter more than crowns, Robert. Some enemies are greater than political rivals. The deadlock breaks when Dragonflight. Scouts bring desperate news. The army of the dead has breached the wall at Eastwatch. The time for political divisions has ended. Survival itself hangs in the balance. Robert's reaction to this news reveals the fundamental difference between kings and leaders. Faced with evidence of supernatural enemies, he can only rage against the impossibility of it all. But Daenerys, despite having no crown or throne, immediately begins coordinating the realm's defense. The Battle of the Dawn begins not with the clash of armies, but with the arrival of winter itself. Unnatural cold sweeps south as the Night King's forces pour through the breach in the wall. The dead march in numbers that darken the landscape, led by White Walkers riding ice spiders and commanding whites with intelligence that chills the living. More than any winter wind, Daenerys takes to the skies aboard Balerion, her two other dragons flanking her in formation. From above, she witnesses the true scope of the threat. An army of the dead stretching beyond the horizon, moving with purpose, that speaks of ancient intelligence and terrible patience. This is no mere horde, but a coordinated force that has spent centuries preparing for this moment. The first engagement occurs at Last Hearth, where Small John Umber leads a desperate delaying action. The Northern Lords fighting with dragonglass, weapons and supported by dragon fire from above, discover both the strengths and limitations of their supernatural enemies. The dead feel no fear, no pain, no fatigue, but they burn, and when their masters fall, entire sections of the army collapse. Jon Snow, now serving as field commander for the combined forces, demonstrates why bastard birth means nothing when survival is at stake. His strategies, developed through months of planning with Daenerys, prove their worth as dragonfire creates corridors of destruction that human forces can exploit. The coordination between fire and steel becomes a deadly dance that gives the living their first hope. But the Night King has prepared for dragons. Ancient weapons of ice and shadow, forged in the depths of the lands of always winter, prove capable of wounding even Targaryen beasts. When an ice spear barely misses Visenya during a strafing run, Daenerys realizes that this battle will require more than just overwhelming force. The turning point comes when Robert Baratheon, witnessing the reality of the supernatural threat, finally understands what Ned has been trying to tell him. Face to face with whites that once served in his own army, the King of Westeros experiences a moment of clarity that transcends political hatred. In an act that redeems his reign, Robert formally pardons Ned Stark and declares the Dragon Alliance official. This royal recognition triggers a cascade of support from previously neutral houses. The Vale Knights, led by Bronze Jon Royce, arrive with the largest cavalry charge in Westerosi history. The Riverlands forces, already committed to the fight, receive reinforcement from Tully bannermen who had remained neutral. Most surprisingly, a fleet from the Iron Islands arrives carrying Euron Greyjoy and knowledge of ancient magics that prove crucial to the battle's resolution. The climactic confrontation occurs at Winterfell itself, as the Night King leads his personal guard in, an assault on the heart of northern resistance. The castle, that has stood for thousands of years, becomes the stage for the final battle between ice and fire, death and life, darkness, and dawn. Daenerys faces her ultimate test when the Night King targets her personally, recognizing that the dragons represent the greatest threat to his victory. The aerial battle above Winterfell's towers becomes a dance of death as dragonfire meets ice magic in contests that shake the very foundations of reality. Jon Snow's true heritage, finally, reveals itself in the battle's crucial moment. When Daenerys falls unconscious after a particularly devastating magical assault, Jon finds himself able to command her dragons through their shared Targaryen blood. The revelation of his parentage, hidden for so long, becomes the key to victory, as two dragon riders coordinate attacks that no single rider could accomplish. The Night King's defeat comes not through overwhelming force, but through sacrifice and strategic thinking that reflects the northern values that shaped this alternate Daenerys. She and Jon, working together with their dragons, create a trap that uses the Night King's arrogance against him. When he comes to personally kill the last Targaryens, he finds himself facing not just dragons, but the combined will of two riders who understand that some victories require personal cost. The aftermath of the Battle of the Dawn transforms Westeros forever. The threat that united the realm has been defeated, but the alliances forged in desperate necessity prove stronger than anyone expected. Daenerys, having saved the realm without ever claiming a crown, becomes the first Targaryen in generations to be universally beloved rather than feared. Robert, humbled by his experience with true enemies, offers Daenerys anything she desires: throne, lands, titles, marriage alliances. Her response reveals how completely her upbringing has shaped her character. She asks only for the establishment of a council that can coordinate the realm's response to future supernatural threats, and for resources to rebuild the devastated North. The story concludes with the most unlikely outcome of all: peace. The Game of Thrones ends not with a new player claiming victory, but with the game itself being abandoned in favor of cooperation. Daenerys returns to Essos not as a conqueror, but as an ambassador building bridges between continents. Jon Snow, his heritage revealed but his duty unchanged, becomes the new Lord Commander of a Night's Watch dedicated to watching for threats beyond understanding. Ned Stark, vindicated in his faith in honor over politics, lives to see his children grow up in a world where dragons soar overhead as protectors rather than destroyers. The Iron Throne remains occupied by Robert, but power increasingly flows through councils where former enemies work together for the common good. This alternate timeline proves that the Song of Ice and Fire was never really about who would rule, but about whether honor, sacrifice, and cooperation could triumph over ambition, hatred, and the desire for power. In saving Daenerys as a child, Ned Stark changed not just her fate, but the fate of two continents. The dragons still fly over Westeros, but they soar as symbols of protection rather than conquest. The Game of Thrones has ended, replaced by something far more precious: hope for a future where fire and ice no longer dance in opposition, but work together to keep the darkness at bay. What do you think of this alternate ending? Could honor really have triumphed over ambition in the world of Game of Thrones? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible what-if scenarios that explore how single moments can change the fate of entire worlds.